welcome back to my channel. I am the NEMT girl. Thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate it. Today I'm hopping into another video for you all. We'll be discussing NEMT customer service protocols. Some things I'll be going over are things that you or your dispatch department should be doing prior to driver's pickup, things that your driver should be doing pre-transport and post-transport, and just overall driver etiquette, and how to provide good customer service. So, let's go. Alright, so we're just going to jump right into it. I do ask that you all bear with me a bit because I am congested. The pollen level here in Georgia is really high and I am so stopped up, you all, so I do apologize, but thank you for joining in. So, like I said, jumping right into it. Customer service protocol for your NEMT business. There are certain levels of protocol that you would like to have in place and established for your company that pretty much it saves you time, it saves you money, and it also keeps everyone on board with knowing what is going on for the day-to-day operations. So let's go into it. A few of the things that I'm going to discuss have to do with the dispatching department, and a few of the things I'm going to discuss have to do with the drivers, okay? So I'm going to separate the two. So first things first, we want to talk about pre-anthem calling. And what pre-anthem calling is pretty much your dispatch department or yourself if you don't have a dispatch department as of yet, calling the client to confirm the details of their trip and also to confirm they're still taking their trip. You don't want a driver to get to a client's home and they decide they're not going or they're not prepared, because if that driver has been assigned to pick up another client, it could throw your scheduling off a bit. So with pre-anthem calling, you want to make sure that your dispatch department or yourself is contacting a client at least 24 hours in advance from their appointment and confirming the trip details. The pickup address, the drop-off address, the pickup time, the appointment time. If they're in a wheelchair, you want to know if they're in an electric wheelchair or a manual wheelchair. You also want to know what their weight is if they're in a wheelchair as well. Do they have oxygen that they'll be transporting with that wheelchair? You also want to know if they'll have any additional passengers. Now, this information should have been listed at the time of booking, or if you're working with a broker at the time of them sending you the work order. But sometimes it's not. And the day of, the client may decide they need a caretaker or a family member to travel with them. And you may not know that information beforehand, so you just want to make sure that you're reconfirming with the client if they do have an additional passenger or not. You also want to reconfirm what their service level is, because the work order could have gotten sent over as an ambulatory trip, but you get there and that client is actually in a wheelchair. So you want to confirm all details that the client has within their work order or the trips of booking. Now, either your dispatch team or yourself, you also want to make sure you all are calling the client at least 1 hour before the driver gets to their home, or 1 hour before their pickup time. The reason being is because although you may have confirmed 24 hours in advance, that client may have woken up that morning or that afternoon or whatever and may not be feeling well. A family emergency could have come up. Anything could have taken place between the 24 hours and that 1 hour before their pickup time. So just to give an extra confirmation, you want to go ahead and have that member be called at least 1 hour before their pickup time. Again, this not only saves you and your team time, but it also keeps the day-to-day operations running smoothly and everything in rotation. Okay, so I have a lot of these details listed in the employee handbook that's on my website. However, just a few tips and tricks that I will let you all know that your driver etiquette should contain in terms of when the driver arrives to the client's home. You want to make sure that the driver has not taken a lunch break inside of the van where any food smells are lingering, any trash is still left around, because appearance is everything, right? If your drivers are smokers, now this is your policy. This is, whatever verbiage you want to lay out into your policy is totally on you. I'll just give you some insight on what my policy is. So even if it's just a cigarette, our drivers cannot smoke whatsoever on the clock. The reason for this being is that even if that driver steps outside of the van and takes a cigarette break, right? When they get back into the van, they still have that same company t-shirt, and that smell of cigarette smoke definitely lingers. Also, what does it look like for your NEMT company if one of your drivers is just outside smoking and they have your company t-shirt on, they have the company van? Marketing and image is everything. So you don't want that to bring a bad reputation for your company or your drivers, because you want to gain the trust of the community that you serve. Again, whatever your policy is for your drivers or for your company, that's totally on you. And what I'm suggesting is just a recommendation. Now, you want to make sure your drivers are also not arriving to the client's home blasting loud music or driving super fast. Not only are you going to make an appearance for the client, but their neighbors. You may have clients or potential clients in that same neighborhood, And your driver may have turned them off with that type of behavior. In fact, when it comes to music, I inform my team and my staff that we strictly just play jazz. We may play the news, or we may play nothing at all. But in terms of a bunch of loud music or a lot of lyrics, many times when the client is on their way to their appointment, they're very stressed, they're very nervous or worried, depending on what they're going there for, and they have a lot of thoughts going through their head at the time. So a lot of noise could be frustrating, it could bring more anxiety to them, so you just want the ride to be nice and relaxing. Okay, so pre-appointment transport, right? This is when the driver has just gotten to the client's home, they're picking them up, they may be waiting for them to come outside. These are some tips and tricks to keep in mind when that stage happens, okay? The dispatch department or yourself has already called the client 24 hours in advance, as well as 1 hour prior to the client's pickup time. But what you will also find helpful is having your drivers to call the client while they're en route to pick them up. Hey, Miss Jones, this is your driver for your pickup today. Just letting you know I'm en route to you and I'm 25 minutes away from your home. Now, the reason for this is because Miss Jones may still be trying to get herself together. She may need to put her shoes on. She may have a mobility issue. Could be ambulatory, right? But she could have a mobility issue where it takes her a little bit longer to get downstairs, things of that sort. So just having that extra prep to say, hey, I'm on my way to you. That gives them, a better heads up that they need to get ready to come outside or for you to come inside and get them. Also, this is a good time. Some clients, they may have forgotten at the time of booking their trip either with yourself or with a broker that got the work order sent to you that, hey, I need to add a pharmacy stop to this transport, right? So if anything changes or any details of that client's trip changes, it's also a great time for the driver to be informed by the dispatch team. You don't want the driver to get there and then there's some type of discrepancy or confusion, because that's not the driver's job. That's the dispatcher's job or yourself to know if there are some changes in the client's work order. So if there are, then you want to relay that information to your driver as soon as you can. Alright, so these are just some tips for when a driver gets to a client's home and say, for instance, it's a no-show. That happens sometimes. You may have gotten your dispatch department to call 24 hours in advance as well as that 1 hour, and you weren't able to get a hold of the client, but you still went over there because you didn't want to just not send a driver, right? You can't do that. You cannot do that. So you sent the driver over there. Now, the driver arrives, they call. This is what your driver should do. Get out the vehicle, knock on the door, ring the doorbell, wait a few minutes to see that someone comes to the door. The phone number that you have on file could be out of service. That client's phone may have died, not on the battery charger, So there are different scenarios where you may not be able to reach the client. So have that driver knock on the door. If it is a broker trip and you have certain allotted time that you have to wait, that's listed in your contract, whether it's 10 minutes or 15 minutes, have your driver wait that allotted time. If it's a private pay client, whatever agreement that you have for wait time for your company standards, your driver should be waiting that allotted time, right? In this allotted time, make sure your driver snaps a picture of the client's home that shows a picture of the address so that if you have any discrepancy or confusions during the audit, you have something to cover your company's trail to prove that you did send the driver there. And that picture should only be sent to either yourself or your dispatch department, however your company is structured at this time. Now, say for instance, everything goes smoothly, the driver is able to make contact with the client and go ahead and retrieve them. These are some tips and tricks that you want to make sure your drivers are doing at that time. You should understand that it is their job to ensure that the client does not have to touch the door. They should be opening the door for the client to enter and also opening the door for the client to exit the car at all times. In order to ensure that the client has actually put their seatbelt on and is secure, your driver should actually buckle them up, pull that seatbelt down, either pass the buckle to the client or buckle that seatbelt for them. This way you're covered. You know that the client was already secured in their seatbelt because it's protocol for your drivers to do so. Now, we've already done the 24-hour confirmation. We've already done the 1 hour prior. We've already called the client to let them know we're en route. Just for a little extra insurance, your driver should also ensure that they're going to the correct pickup address. Again, this is a job of or a duty of your dispatch department or yourself, but for your drivers to make sure that they're going to the right direction, you want to just have them check the address that you have listed on the work order to compare it to what the client really is going to. And if there are any discrepancies, the driver should contact dispatch immediately. Now, if this is a private pay client, then you should already be aware if you have wait time included or if the client will be a call for return. If this is a broker trip and you may not necessarily be familiar with what time that client is going to be finishing their appointment, you should have some type of callback card in which the client can contact your company to say, hey, we're ready to go home. My company actually has callback cards for each vehicle, and the information listed on the callback cards is simple. It's the company name, it also lists the company phone number and website. And on the back, it has the details of transportation levels that we service, as well as our driver's name. So when the client is ready to go home, they just have to pull out that card that the driver gave them, and they're ready to go. I recommend, if you are going to use callback cards, I recommend that you train your drivers to give this client the card before they leave the client's home. Many times, clients are already kind of curious to know, how do I call to let them know that I'm ready? So just put them at more ease prior to transport. You want to make sure they have clear instructions and directions on how to get in contact with your company when they're ready to go home. So have your driver get the information out prior to transport. Now, I like to train my drivers on how to make valuable small talk with a client while in transit to their appointment. And what I mean by that is making small talk to just get details from the client to know what is going on with their appointment and also what dispatch could expect pertaining to this particular client. So I'll give you some examples. So once the client is loaded in the vehicle and the driver is en route to drop the client off at their appointment, the driver can say something such as, so is this your first time seeing this doctor? Your driver can say something along the lines of, so what kind of appointment are you having today? Again, private pay clients are different. You will probably have these details already, but when it comes to a broker, you may not. So just giving you some tips on that end. The reason it's important to know what kind of appointment that client may be having, say for instance, they're going for an outpatient surgery or they're going to dialysis treatment. That could take anywhere between 3 hours to 6 hours, so you want to kind of gauge how long you can expect until that client is calling you back for a ride home. Again, if you have paid wait time or if you have a private pay client, you're going to probably have these details already. But when you don't have these details dealing with the broker, these are important questions for your drivers to ask. Is this your first time seeing this doctor? The reason that question is important is because many first-timers going to a new doctor, they have additional paperwork to fill out or extra tests and scans to run. So typically an appointment may be an hour to an hour and a half, but for a first-time visit, it could be 2 hours or longer. Another question that your driver's going to ask the client is, hey, do you know about how long your appointment may be today? Sometimes clients are aware of how long their appointments may be, and this helps for dispatch to gauge what time that B leg of the trip will be ready for transport. Alright, so post-transport, after the client has done their appointment, they're ready to go home, you want to make sure, of course, that client is secure in that vehicle, so we're going to pass them that seatbelt, either lock it for them or wait until they lock it themselves. Sometimes post-appointments, clients are more at ease than when they were prior to getting to their appointment. And so that allows them to want to open up more, have more conversation. That's great. However, other times the client does not want to talk. So you should train your drivers to be able to use their best judgment to see, hey, maybe I should engage in conversation with this client, or I'm just going to play it light, turn on some jazz music, or allow him or her to enjoy the scenery while I transport them home. If this is a private pay client or even a broker client, you want to get some information in terms of if they have a follow-up appointment, because that will allow your dispatch department or yourself to reach out to this client and try to secure their next transport for their next appointment. Alright, so I hope you all got to gain something from this video today. As always, please make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to this video here. Also, if you're not subscribed to my website for the latest updates, drop your emails below and I can add you manually to that list so that you're not missing any of the updates for NEMT. Also, you make sure that you check me out on live each Wednesday at 7 p.m. Find me either on Instagram at ThatNEMTGirl or join my Facebook group, That NEMT Girl. Each Wednesday we cover different topics that are surrounding the NEMT industry. I also bring in other partners and providers to join me on the live and provide experience from their point of view. We're also there to answer all of your questions at once, and we have many providers all logged in at one time from all over the country. So make sure that you're joining in each Wednesday at 7 p.m., okay? I thank you all for joining me. Until next time, bye.